Hey, welcome to Caching in the Northwest. Now, this is the podcast for geocaching, from the birthplace of geocaching. You would think I would know my own intro, but that's not always the case. And, you know, I had an intro for 3 years and then it changed. And now I have to come up with a new one and it doesn't flow as well. So this is the podcast from the birthplace of geocaching right here in the great Pacific Northwest. It's Thursday night at 9 p.m. Pacific. I'm Chris of the Northwest, and we're going to talk about geocaches and geocachers from here and all around the globe. So while you're running out to replace the Halloween candy you've eaten, we'll be caching in the Northwest.
That's right. And tonight, we're talking about spooky places here in the Pacific Northwest and beyond. And we're going to chat about those things with guest iHam tonight. So welcome to the show. Or I should say, welcome back to the show.
Yep. Thank you.
It's been a little while, but we're glad you're here. As always, live audience, well, we want to hear from you too. Because, you know, what would the show be without the chat? It would just be us, and that's no fun at all. Of course, it's time to bring in our spooky simian. Some say he raises flamingos in his bathtub. And others say, well, he's the fifth person in a barbershop quartet. All we know is he's called a land monkey.
I am barely controlling my laughter as Jim is doing that intro, because what people who are listening to this podcast or watching it live have no idea that is going on is the expertise and skill of Wits End and his smooth delivery, because those lines that he spoke were being typed in as he said them into the script, which was just beautiful to watch this all come together from the backside of the podcast.
It's kind of that way every week, isn't it?
They're usually in there before you start to read them, but, you know, I was looking at the rundown and I'm like, oh, I forgot to put in the land monkey intros.
What did you think, Dan? Was that impressive?
It was impressive. But you know, you're giving away the secrets. A good magician never gives away their secrets.
You know what? A good magician gives away just enough to keep people.
There you go. There you go.
Who says he's a good magician?
Yeah, you can try.
There you go. There you go. Anyways, great to be back here. Thank you, Seabeck Tribe. Yes, we always love that part of the show. Great work by Wits End and Chris of the Northwest of always coming up with something new and interesting. That's a full-time job unto itself, I'm sure.
It's just one of the many facets of your personality that we touch on each and every week.
We couldn't do any of it all if we didn't have a land monkey to intro, so I'm glad you're all here.
I was going to say, Chris, there's a lot of personalities to work with, so it's a lot of work for you there. All right. Hey, well played. It is good to be here. It is good to be here with my co-host friends. It's good to be here with my friend from the Tacoma area, iHam. Nice to see you there, buddy. Good to have you back. All right.
Good to be seen.
Yeah. And less good to be obscene. All right. So we are, before we jump into anything else, going to throw out the usual quick reminder that we appreciate the support of our patrons who help to keep the podcast coming each and every week. Thanks to Land Sharks, one of our corporate Denali level sponsors. Now, I reached out to Land Sharks earlier and they're just getting things back in order and didn't have a message for us yet. So I'm just going to remind you to head on over to landsharks.ca, check out new products and existing products that were already on there that maybe you thought, oh yeah, I should buy one of those. Anyhow,
right, two
or two, right? You never know when there's a sale. So check it out. And of course, our other Denali level corporate sponsor, Gold Country Geotourism. Check out exploregoldcountry.com to learn more about the geotours and the region. And hey, you know, we're going to talk about spooky places tonight. I'm barely going to talk. And one of the things I just want to shout out about Gold Country, I know I mentioned this ages ago, but I'm going to remind people, if you follow Gold Country on their social media, every once in a while, they'll post something they call real REEL to real, REAL. And what they do is they take a location that has been filmed in television or movies in Gold Country, and they show two juxtaposing images, one of the actual location and one of the location as it was shot in the television or movie. And it's a lot of fun to see that. And some of them are kind of spooky places. So it's fun to follow that and check it out. So, follow them on the social medias. And of course, on Facebook, explore Gold Country. All right.
And the new app.
And their new app. I forgot to mention that because it's not in the current show notes. But
I downloaded that this week.
Did you? What did you think?
Yeah, it was quite well done. And there's some places now I want to go visit. I don't know if they're spooky. They don't seem to be described as spooky, but nonetheless.
If you work hard enough, you can make anywhere spooky.
That's right.
All I have to do is show up.
All right. Well, speaking of showing up, folks, if you want to know more about supporting this show and showing up, well, click that Patreon link on the cashingnw.com, a website.
Yes. Thank you so much. Hey, folks, we know you want to get into tonight's chat. So if you have a question or comment, use the hashtag spooky, and please don't use the hashtag pooky because that means something completely different. So let's just use the hashtag spooky to join into the main comment. Of course, you can use the hashtag FATAS if you have a question for the after show. And finally, use the hashtag podcast baking to show us what you've got cooking. You know what? Pictures are good. Samples are better.
So
okay.
One of our usual podcast baking contributors is the better half of our guest tonight. So I'm wondering if we're going to see anything coming up and our guest is going to go,
not this evening. It was a long day at the school, apparently. So,
fair enough.
And in order to keep there from being echoing, she's actually watching from a totally different room. So,
how thoughtful.
Yes. So, anywho, but often, but not tonight.
All right, good stuff. Well, I was informed moments before the show began that the news has been thrown over to me tonight instead of usually Chris or Wits End. So, boy, this is kind of exciting. I get to get the news tonight. All right. Well, we've got news. We got a little bit of news here. It is from Fairmont, West Virginia, from the West Virginia News. I'm assuming WVA means West Virginia. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Very good.
You throw states at me, you never know what you're going to get. I'm just telling you.
And there's 50 of them, so there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
I throw provinces at you guys, and you rarely get it right. So
I
feel like I'm doing. Chris can't even say Fraser. So
hey, I know about the Fraser River. And Valley.
Go.
I also know about Fraser, the TV show.
The TV show, yes.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, back to West Virginia. The Marion County Convention and Visitors Bureau unveiled, oh my gosh, its third geocaching trail on Saturday morning, welcoming both locals and hobbyists from out of state to visit 9 pieces of street art around the county in their quest to find the caches. They expect about 100 people will take advantage of the new trail between now and the end of the month. I think we can do better than that, folks. Get out there.
I thought that too.
Yeah. Well, of course, the end of the month is coming up pretty fast, but I think we can do it if we try hard enough. It's a trail that'll take participants from the Emperor Palpatine Park all the way to Mannington and many places in between. All right.
Yeah, you may have read that slightly wrong, but you had all the names right. You just added a title that wasn't on there. But anyway, go ahead.
It seemed to fit. All right. Anyhow, so yeah, the idea, the quote here is the idea of county tourism offices and even the state doing geocaching initiatives is to bring people in. It's not really a new idea, but the way they do it here in Marion County is so different. It's exciting because the location lends itself to lots of unique opportunities that other places just don't have. So I say, hold them to that statement. Validate that statement. Go check it out and find out and report back and call us at 293-693-TFTC and let us know what you learned. That's right, Komakino. That's what I said.
Emperor Palpatine.
Emperor Palpatine.
It's Palpatine Park, and I have to admit that's the first thing I read too. No,
Actually, I'm going back and rechecking it, and it's Palatine Park, but it was close enough that I figured I could get away with Emperor Palpatine.
Not Palpatine, not Palestine.
All right. Well, that's our news. The end.
And I just thought that was interesting that they're doing something different in Marion County, and it seems to be working, bringing people in from out of state.
So is that the part of the state where W.V. Tim lives, or is that totally different part of the state, or any idea?
It's not that big a state, so.
No, I don't know. He's in,
I think he's in the eastern side, isn't he?
I understand that there's some country roads that could take you home.
Yeah, to the place where you belong.
Yeah, Mountain Mama.
But I can't come up with Berkeley County is where he is. It's not like I spent an entire day sitting next to the Berkeley County booth and suddenly now I can't remember the name of it anymore. No, that didn't happen.
Well, we're going to find out if anybody from Berkeley County or Marion County watches the podcast, and I'm pretty sure we'll hear.
Oh yeah, we'll hear.
All right, well, enough about West Virginia. It's a great place to go geocache, but tonight we're talking about spooky places and scary places right here in the Pacific Northwest with patron, friend of the show, radio contact, you name it. We're glad you're here, iHam. Welcome.
Well, thank you. It is good to be back on the show. It's been quite a while, but it's for those that don't know me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I've been caching since 2004. Started off with when my kids were in elementary school, and it was something that we picked up a GPS cheap on clearance. It only went to 2 digits after the decimal place, so had to spend a fair bit of time interpolating or extrapolating. Okay, where do I have to go here? But found our first 100 with that. Took the boys out the first time. They were hooked. Took Diane out. Not long after she got hooked, and we've just been enjoying it ever since. So
correct me if I'm wrong. If you had paid full price for the GPS, would it have included the third digit?
Pretty sure no.
Okay.
Pretty sure that's why it was on clearance. The new models were out, and they had all 3 or 4. Yeah.
Anything after the decimal place doesn't really count, right?
Is it cheating? I mean, really?
Right. We'll go with that. Sure.
Okay.
No, that's
nod, smile.
That's definitely illustrating a level of commitment to the game to say, you know what? We don't have a full set of coordinates, but we're still going to find our first.
Right.
We found our first 100 with that, and on our way down to Oregon, actually we found about 110 with that, and then while we were in the land of zero sales tax, we bought a better GPS.
I always forget that about Oregon. Yeah, it's keep in mind, especially if you live in the southern part of Washington.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes that 2.5 hour drive is worth it.
Yeah,
maybe not now with the higher gas prices. I mean, you've got to buy some, high value targets, but it can be worth it.
Starting to sound like a Navy SEAL there with your high value targets. All right. So
let's for an HVT.
Yeah, let's get back on topic here. There are many things about geocaching that can be scary, and we're going to talk about some scary stuff tonight. I mean, hiking 5 miles in and then facing the prospect of a DNF. Well, you know what? Mrs. Monkey and I have done that, and there's a video about it. Realizing at 11 p.m. that you haven't found a cache to keep the streak alive. Well, that sounds scary. Yeah. And I mean, these 3 words are scary enough. Second to find. All of these things can be scary, but there are some caches that are designed to disquiet or disconcert one. They're engineered to enervate. They are planned to petrify. Some are placed in spots that you'd rather not go alone or at night or some combination of those two things. But what is scarier than not getting the smiley? So you go for them anyways. And tonight, we're going to start looking at some caches that could fit into that Halloween mood if you would rather turn off the lights, lock the doors, and go geocaching rather than hand out free candy.
We could turn off the lights as we do this podcast. You know, it'd be easier is if you turn off the lights while you're listening to it. Not if you're driving at night, but any other time.
There we go. How's that?
Okay.
Is that scary enough?
You've never looked better.
Boo. All right. Well, Dan, what do you think?
Well, I think, it's time to face your fears, quite honestly. And to help us with that, over the years, friends of the show, patrons, Team Noltex have helped all of us do that with their Fear This series of caches.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it appears that there are only 3 of this series left still in play. But the ones that are still there are Arachnophobia, which is GC Kilo Alpha Z November. Acrophobia, and everybody knows arachnophobia is fear of spiders.
Right.
So there was a movie to that name, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't say it was a good movie. I just said it was a movie. Acrophobia, the fear of heights. That's GC Kilo Echo Juliet Charlie. That one is actually there's a bridge by Stanley and Seafort's restaurant in Tacoma, and it's a fairly good sized gorge that it goes over, and you have to lean over the railing to get information. And so, interestingly enough, all of these Fear This caches are listed as D5s because if you have that fear, it's going to be a difficulty 5 to face that fear and go forward with these caches. And then there is also the claustrophobia, Fear This claustrophobia cache. GC7ZZ Kilo Romeo. And it's actually the second edition of cache with that name. The first one was inside a culvert in Point Defiance Park. And then the second one is actually also in a culvert, but it's off the Foss Waterway. And actually, Chris and I went and found this one together. You actually have to wait until low tide to go find it because otherwise the culvert is filled with water.
Completely full of water.
Completely full of water.
Bit of water.
Yeah, no, it's the
5-foot culvert is full.
And so we went, and both of our lovely brides decided to stay up on the sidewalk above the culvert, ostensibly so they could call 911 if something went wrong.
Yes, that was a good one. I went back with Wits End.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
Yeah,
but you do have to time the tides.
Yeah,
exactly. He showed me a picture of when he first tried it, and yeah, it was completely full. I mean, and this is a 5-foot tall culvert. It's that moves a lot of water, but when it's full, it's full.
The high tide mark is above the opening of the pipe, so you'd need scuba gear to search for it at that point, which I suppose could be doable, but not by me.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's reasonably deep into that culvert.
Yeah, it's in their ways.
Yep.
So you've got to walk in there.
Now that is a great series of caches, and as you mentioned, they list them all as D5 if you have the fear. Otherwise, it's not that hard. But I've done most. I don't know if I think I've done all of them. But anyway, some of them no longer there. Myrmecophobia, that's fear of ants. It was in a big ant hill or near a big.
It was a
ant hill.
huge anthill.
Yeah,
I think they had to rehide that one a couple of times because it kept moving.
I think that one went through
The
two
anthill
iterations
kept
of it as
getting
well.
bigger and encroaching on the cache.
There's a kenophobia, fear of voids or dark spaces.
I don't remember doing
Cynophobia.
that one.
I don't remember doing that one either. There's also cynophobia, fear of dogs. I don't remember that one. I do remember choleraphobia. It's the first one I believe I did in the series. That's a fear of clowns. And there was a clown store, or it was just a clown store. Was it a party store or something?
Costume store, yeah.
Costume, clown. Yeah.
And that was fun.
Yep.
So that was in Lakewood there.
And
So-
everybody walked out with a red nose, I believe.
They would give you a red nose. You had to go in and ask for the cash at the sales counter. It was behind the counter, but
Oh, that's brilliant.
it was, yeah. So if you were really scared of clowns, you didn't want to go into a costume store. But fun series, great.
It was a fun one, and
Yeah.
if you have a chance to do any of the ones that are still around, please do so. They're quite worthwhile.
Face your fears and get her done.
Get her done.
That's right.
Another, so fear, very spooky, right? And again, some of these you have to plan out, others you can just go and visit. There's another category we thought we should add, kind of a last minute ad for the show because, well, ghost towns seem appropriate, don't they?
Yeah.
What'd you find on ghost towns, iHam?
Well, there are one of the ones that we all were able to enjoy as a group hike a while back was the ghost town at Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
So really not that
Didn't feel
scary, but
spooky at all. No.
it didn't seem spooky at all. Although there was kind of that grindy, squeaky. Oh, that was the turntable for the train. Never mind.
That was my knees. I had a problem. Yeah. They were kind of grindy and squeaky.
So the other thing is if you were to go to along, come back here, you. My laptop is behaving badly here.
It's spooky, isn't it?
If you're, yes, it is. It keeps minimizing and maximizing. If you're wanting to do some hiking along the Carbon River, there are several caches along the Carbon at various mining ghost towns in the Carbon River Valley, including.
Dan, sorry, just to interrupt because I don't know where the Carbon River is, and maybe a bunch of our listeners don't know. So, approximately where in Washington State would that be?
It is near Mount Rainier.
Okay.
There is a. I'm trying to remember which corner it is. It's not one of the major interests.
No, it's not a major. I think it's the northwest side of Mount Rainier.
I believe that is correct.
Perfect.
Anyway, but no, good call. Anyway, if you're along there, that was a coal mining area at one time, and there are at least 3 different caches in that area. They are the Fairfax cache, GC November Hotel Charlie Zulu, the skeleton in a ghost town, which is GC 5 November 9 Hotel. Oh, there we go. North side of Mount Rainier. The Melmont ghost town, which is GC 63 Juliet Fox 8. And then also there is the Melmont ghost town also has a cache that is part of the Rainier 100 series. So anyway, there was a ghost town down south of Olympia that had a couple caches in it. They have all been archived now because the public is no longer allowed access into that ghost town for safety reasons. So we actually had a chance to find them and we said, "Oh yeah, we got those ghost towns." Oh, all the ones there are now archived.
The ghosts were complaining of all the human
ghosts
traffic.
were complaining, apparently, yeah. The archive note from the reviewer is, yeah, this area is no longer open to the public. So
they were trying to rest in peace, and people just kept walking around.
How rude.
Yeah.
There's so while we're talking about this, it reminded me a couple of years ago we did a road trip with our friends the Land Sharks up past Lillooet, and we found this cool ghost town just outside of a community called Braylorn. I was trying to quickly look it up on my map, but I found it. And so it's an old mining community from I don't know, 70s probably. So it's not like a turn of the century ghost town, but it's one of the more modern ghost towns, which makes it even more creepy when you're walking through these 1970s houses that are completely abandoned, and the doors are open, the windows are gone, and but there's like the peeled up lino on the floor, and it was pretty cool. But the
70s were pretty spooky to begin with,
right?
Yeah. The 70s were a bad idea the first time.
But if people are curious about the area I'm talking about, the community is called Braylorn. There is a small community outside of the ghost town that still exists, but the cache is GC3W2 Echo Juliet. So that would be one as well to check out in BC. And we've got tons more ghost towns, but I didn't do any research before the show.
Well, we've got plenty in the chat to help us along.
Yes.
Excellent. Yes. Why don't we throw it over to some of this stuff from the chat?
Let's see. I don't want to talk about that. Oh, here we go. Komakino says the Nightmare Incarnation caches are pretty cool and creepy. Check them out if you haven't already. They'll be featured in tomorrow's special Halloween episode of Caching with Komakino and the Kid.
Nice.
So Carnation is where Geo Woodstock was held.
Right. That's why it's familiar.
Yeah. If that gives you any idea. But Nightmare Incarnation, they usually have a Halloween themed event there every year. And they put out a few more caches, and it's a lot of fun.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Let's see. Dora Moore says, I was doing a night cache in Watershed Park in Delta and got separated from the group by about 50 meters. Something scampered across my foot. I set a new record for the 50-meter dash.
Well, and I got to say, Watershed Park in Delta is a great place to go. If you have, there are, or at least there were, I think there still are 2 night caches that are fairly lengthy night caches in that park. And that would be a fun one to do if you're up in the Metro Vancouver area on Halloween and you want something fun to do. Tackle one of those night caches. They'll take you about an hour to do them, and it's a bit of a spooky park in the dark. That would be a good adventure.
Wits End, you're so good at reading. I'm going to let you read this one.
Let's say I don't know what that is. Anatidophobia, tita. I don't know. The irrational fear that somewhere a duck is watching you. It's GC9 X-ray Golf Kilo Tango.
Is that really an irrational fear? I don't know.
It's just a sign you're quacking up.
It seems completely rational to me.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Keats says the very definition of a spooky hide, a mine shaft on Bowen Island, takes you to a guardian, shall we say.
Of the galaxy?
Nope, not a guardian of the galaxy, but I've done that one as well. Though I know exactly. That's GC3Q Victor Golf 0. I know exactly the cache Keats is talking about. I've done it myself, and I got a bit of a startle when I came around the last corner on that one.
I believe I've heard that story.
You have heard that story.
I will let it remain a mystery for those that want to
there you go.
Seek it, because that was a good one.
If you haven't done that one, put it on your list.
There's also, I don't know if it's still there in Astoria, in some of the bunkers. You go back, wander back and through, and you come across a start there, just where the cache is. Keats also says glowing deer or bear eyes. while in the woods on a remote island. That's pretty spooky. Yeah.
Good
You see
times.
glowing eyes, you don't know exactly what's behind them.
I was going to say deer eyes, not so bad. Bear eyes, yeah, that would be a lot spookier if you recognize the difference. I don't know if I would be able to tell the difference, to be honest, other than maybe the height that they're at. I don't know. But I remember that reminds me of a fun time we had in Victoria. We were doing a night cache near the forests outside of the grounds of the University of Victoria. And then we were just getting started. So you walk across this field looking for the starting night tacks, right? As you often do. And so we're shining the light around and we say, oh, there's the 2 night tacks right there. And then they move. And then they move again. We're like, okay, those aren't night tacks. Okay.
These are not the glows you were looking for.
No, they weren't. Good times. All right.
One more.
Okay.
Just Carlo said my 100th find was GC2 Victor 7 Yankee November. That plays on the adage that geocachers know the best place to hide bodies.
Nice.
Okay.
Which actually leads nicely into
Yeah.
Good segue.
You know, there are times where the trek is just as scary as the destination.
Indeed.
And has been mentioned on this podcast before, one that kind of fits that mode is the bloated, festering head of my first victim. It's GC Juliet 7 Victor Hotel.
Yeah, that was a fun one. You don't
Yes,
need
it
the whole
was.
body. You just need the bloated, festering head.
Yeah.
Is that one still active?
I believe it is.
I
Yes.
think it
Wow,
is.
That's been out there for a long time.
Yes. Now, I believe the container is starting to show wear, meaning that, the container is actually a head.
Bloated and festering.
Yes, it is bloated
Sort
and festering. From what I heard last, it's quite beaten up, but it's still there. Rumor has it that there is a dry path into Ground Zero.
I couldn't prove that.
Nobody that I've talked to has found it, but they've all heard that maybe there is. I don't think there is.
I think it's an urban legend.
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the whole mythos around the cache.
Yeah. Yeah, we found that one way back when.
Oh, I want to say it was a milestone, wasn't it?
Every cache is a milestone.
200, 300. Yeah, you're right.
But
Yeah. I remember doing it, and we had boots. I didn't have waders. You should have waders.
we should have, because the water was deeper than the boots.
Yes, and I had a complete change of clothes in the car. That's my suggestion for anybody going out there.
Or at least pants.
No, complete change, everything.
And a towel, right, Chris?
Always have a towel.
Always a towel, yeah.
There you go.
Well, every good hitchhiker knows that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now. But yeah, that was one where we were looking for maybe a better way to get in, and we walked back and forth along the edge of the water there, and I tried to go over a log, and I didn't go way down. I think I've told you I'm klutzy.
He went
Okay, I'll
over.
admit it. I got over it,
He did.
and yeah, I injured myself though.
Yeah, he as most fallen logs do, they have branches sticking out of them because they were once trees. And he used a branch as a handhold to help get over the log, and the branch decided to let go, at which point he fell forward and practically impaled himself on the remains of the branch that was sticking up. He had a big wound in his side to show for it. I think he even put a picture of his wound on the cache page. But yeah, all I could envision was having to call 911 from the middle of a swamp and back in a time when we didn't really have a street address. And why were you out here? Well, we were looking for the bloated, festering head of my first victim, sir.
And Chris had not yet learned that a trip to the ER is not on the schedule.
There you go.
And it was not that evening. I decided, nope, this isn't going to stop me.
Yeah.
We're here. We've committed. And
There you go.
Wits End, weren't you crossing a log and did it break and you went in?
I don't remember. It was a lot of...
What I remember is that you were getting wet and I was mocking you. Ha ha. And at that point, what I was standing on broke
Yeah. So
and I got wetter than you.
I think
So,
I did come out drier and cleaner in the end, but
I've learned that don't mock until it's over.
Yeah, there you go.
So anyway, and
So,
be
go ahead.
careful crossing fallen logs.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, regardless of whether you're looking for the bloated, festering head of your first
correct.
victim. Yeah. All right. Hey, another thing that can be a bit spooky, and this is definitely, I think, probably where a lot of people would have started this whole thing, but we're getting there, folks. Is a walk through a cemetery. And interestingly enough, there are a number of caches located in cemeteries. Now, this is an interesting nuance because in some municipalities, some regions, you are not allowed to put geocaches in cemeteries. So cemetery caches may be multis or puzzles where you get information from headstones, etc., or plinths and such, and then find a cache outside of the cemetery. But in Washington State, you can hide caches in the cemetery, and that sort of adds a little extra flavor. And Dan, I know you're going to tell us about a few of those, but while Dan's sharing some, if you know of other areas where they can actually hide caches in the cemetery, I'd be interested in hearing about that as well. So, Dan, to you.
All righty. So, well, one of the first cemetery caches we ever found, and this was with the 2-digit GPS. It was that early on. It was actually, I think it was the first cemetery cache we ever found. Was called Dead Governors down in Salem, Oregon. That's GC 2 Delta Alpha 0. And as I understand it, the CO went to the cemetery's caretaker and explained what he wanted to do. You want to hide what? But because this was early days yet in caching. But once he convinced the caretaker that he wasn't A, crazy, and B, kidding, the caretaker said, I have the spot just for you. And I won't give away any spoilers on this one, but needless to say, it is a very appropriate location in the cemetery.
Yes.
And it's a fun one. It is a lot of fun one. And just because it's in a cemetery, it doesn't have to be spooky.
Right.
It can be, but you can have some fun in the cemetery. Another fun one is up at Lake Forest Park, in the cemetery up in Lake Forest Park, Washington, north of Seattle. There is one called Squirrel Squash. That's
Sounds
GC.
delicious. Sounds delicious.
GC 1 Mike Echo 43. And it is a multi. And that's the other thing. A lot of caches in cemeteries are, in fact, multis, because you do end up going to find info from numerous gravestones and whatnot. But Squirrel Squash, it is a multi. It will take you a bit because you're walking around. It's a fairly large cemetery, and you're walking around a fair bit in that cemetery. But then it takes you to a final that will it'll make you laugh. But the whole thing is a tribute to a poor squirrel who did not make it across the road.
Oh no.
Poor
So
squirrel.
anyway,
I've done several
but it's-
multis in cemeteries. And you're right. You go from gravestone to gravestone getting information until you find get the final. Limax and I were looking for one. Did all the steps. The final was missing. We were convinced of it. We couldn't find it. We went back and verified our numbers.
That happens.
Yeah.
So, speaking of things that sound spookier than they really are, there's one in Kent, Washington, down south of the airport that it shares a name with a certain horror novel, so it gives it kind of the factor. Pet Sematary 2.
Can you say what kind of factor that is again? Okay.
Don't ask me to spell it. It's GC75 Delta Alpha 5. And Pet Sematary 2. And it is, in fact, located in a honest-to-goodness pet cemetery. You think, are those things actually a thing? Yeah, yeah, they are. But unless the fact that going into a pet cemetery alone gives you the heebie-jeebies, there's really nothing to fear at this one.
As you were sharing that story about that cache, Dan, I was trying to quickly look up and see if I could find it. I can't find it, but Mrs. Monkey and I were out for a hike with my mom and dad, so it probably would have been up around the Campbell River area, I'm thinking. But we were out for a hike with my parents and hiking around a lake, and we're like, oh, look, there's a geocache over here. Oh, that's weird. It's like named in memory of our dog or something like that. It had a name like that. Oh, that's kind of weird. And as we walked up off the trail or up a deer trail further up the side of the hill, there's like all these graves. People had created an ad hoc pet cemetery out in a park somewhere.
Okay, that's kind of spooky in its own right.
Right. And so I was like, okay, this is kind of weird, but yeah, I can imagine that just the concept could be scary unto itself.
This leads in nicely to our next topic.
Okay.
Starcatcher says Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana all have geocaches hidden within cemeteries. Almost everyone has at least one geocache. Most have the letters SQ in the title. SQ stands for Spirit Quest.
There's a series in BC called Spirit Quest that takes you to cemeteries and gives you lots of really great history, but the caches generally aren't in the cemeteries.
Okay.
They're nearby, right? Reference from.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're the multis, like Dan was saying.
Well, and there are also a number of Spirit Quest caches in Washington as well. So the ones in Washington have almost all been hidden by cacher Sir Carp. And to date, he has hidden 60 caches in the Spirit Quest series in Washington. Of those 60, 5 have been archived. 3 are currently disabled as of this recording. But they are all, most of them seem to be in Western Washington, but there are some as far east as Spokane. So of those 60, Monkey Cakes and I have found 13 of those. There's the Union Pioneer Calvary Cemetery, southwest of Tumwater. That's GC 6 Bravo 16 Whiskey. There are 3 different cemeteries in Lakewood, just south of Tacoma, that have Spirit Quest ones. The Old Paupers Cemetery, which is GC 5 Quebec Juliet 09. And then there are also several of them in different IOOF cemeteries. Those are the cemeteries originally sponsored by the International Order of Foresters. And we've visited a couple of those, including the IOOF cemetery in Alder, which is GC 657 Alpha November. And also the one in La Center, which is the Mount Zion IOOF cemetery. And that is GC 5 Mike Yankee X-ray Romeo. And that that last one, we actually just visited last month. We were on our way back home from Portland. And as we were looking right nearby the cache, we noticed a couple different grave markers that had multiple names and multiple family names, all on the same marker with the same death date.
Oh, story there.
Yeah. Well, it ends up that Le Center, where this, cemetery was located, the community around Le Center was hit very hard by the Occult Burn forest fire complex back in September of 1902. It wiped out entire families in just a matter of minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Goodness.
And so the what remains they were able to gather, they interred in basically a family plot or a single plot. And there were a couple of these different markers and at least 3 different families that we noticed right there. And those markers are right within just a few meters of the cache itself.
Fascinating.
So, which actually does kind of bring us to another aspect of the cemetery caches. If you're into history, cemeteries can lead to some fascinating historical discoveries. And, some of the cemetery caches can bring you to those places.
Mm-hmm.
We found one early on in our caching. We were down visiting relatives in Nevada and went up to Virginia City, which is famous for being, among other things, where Mark Twain was the newspaper editor for a while. And there was a cache there called A Gated Community, right at the cemetery. The cemetery that was basically the boot hill for that town, because it was a rough and ready mining town, and there was a lot of violence and whatnot. And that's where a lot of people ended up getting carted off to that cemetery. So,
Wow.
So
there is a lot of history at grave sites, and some of these you find. I mean, we have so many listed here. I don't know if we have time for all of them, but near Eatonville is remembering Sue Lick, Native American who led the Van Eatons there to a spot where now Eatonville sits. In Rainier, Mount Rainier and Yelm, there's the Revive the Sacred. The land was donated to James Longmire of Mount Rainier fame. Many Longmires are interned there. Let's see. We also have there's a cache near the Jimi Hendrix gravesite in Renton.
Yeah.
I've done that one. Yeah. Because
I just did an adventure lab there.
Yeah. And there's a virtual, which is now unfortunately archived, called Enter the Dragon. It's Bruce Lee's gravesite at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle. So,
wonder why that's archived.
Don't know.
I think it was one of the first original virtuals, and I don't know that the cache owner is actually still playing the game. So, one other one that I did want to point out was out in Eatonville, which happens to be Monkey Cake's hometown. There is a cache at the cemetery there called Konnichiwa Eatonville. And that's GC22 Romeo Kilo Quebec. And it highlights the small Japanese section of the cemetery. There was actually a fairly thriving Japantown in Eatonville, section of Eatonville, prior to World War II. And I was fascinated to find grave markers as I was looking through for the information for that cache, which is hidden just outside of the cemetery in this case. But there were grave markers originally for people who originally came from the part of Japan that when I was a child, my folks had lived in Japan, and we lived there as a family, and it was that part of Japan that a number of these graves pointed back to. So it was just fascinating.
Mm-hmm. You know, I question sometimes the motive for people using cemeteries as hiding spots for caches. You know, is it just because there's a lot of good information there, or easy numbers to grab that you can go do a multi, or is it to bring you there to show you some history? And if it's history and not trying to be spooky or trying to be macabre, you know, it's just that's fine. Let's bring them there for history. You know, I'm not one for adding a lot of foot traffic into a cemetery for no reason. Just anyway,
there are a few cemeteries that really don't seem to lend themselves to caches. There is one, the Saar Pioneer Cemetery in Renton. We've started referring to it as, oddly enough, the place caches go to die. There's been a couple different caches, including originally there was one there, and I kid you not, that was called the Monster Cache, because the family plot that it was next to was for the monster family. I ain't making this up. But they, including there's a grave marker there for one that just says baby monster.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, it's just like, oh my word.
That one was a little too on the nose.
It's a little too on the nose. That one was archived. No, you can't make some of this stuff up. There is now a Saar Cemetery cache that's placed there, but then the folks that manage the cemetery, and it's an old pioneer cemetery. But the folks that manage it actually now have, for the most part, closed it down to public traffic. So there is a cache there, but it spends most of its time disabled. And actually, just when the cache owner knows that the park or that the cemetery is going to be available for public access, they will re-enable it for the day or days that access is there, and then they disable it again. So
that smells like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. So anyway, there you are. Phobias and bloated heads and ghost towns and cemeteries. Oh my!
And baby monsters.
Baby monsters. There are many types of caches that may or may not send a chill down your spine.
Good stuff. Well, Dan, thank you so much. Sorry, Chris. I'm not sure what you want to throw out there.
I wanted to do exactly what you're doing.
Grab some of these from the show or from the.
No, say thank you to Dan for preparing this for this show.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, iHam, for all the work that you put into this. This is a lot of fun. We've got so much in the chat that I don't think we can get to it all.
I do need to put a shout out to Monkey Cakes for she did a lot of the initial research and then handed me that, and then I kind of turned it more into narrative. But she did a lot of the work on it as well. So I don't want to sell her short.
Thank you, Monkey Cakes. Maybe, Chris, what we can do is, and I agree, we're just about at time for the regular part of the podcast, but there's been so much great content. We'll go through the hashtag spookies in the after show as well as the FATAS because there's just so much content here. So if we haven't gotten to your comment, we are going to, but we do need to wrap up the regular part of the show, and we'll throw it into the after show.
Perfect. I love that idea. And folks, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Caching in the Northwest. We hope you enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And I want to take a moment to thank Land Sharks and Gold Country Geotourism, our corporate Denali level sponsors. Landsharks.ca, that's LANDSHARKZ.ca, is the outdoor adventure and geocaching store. Check them out online. Remember, they ship those online orders daily. And for absolutely amazing geocaching adventures, check out exploregoldcountry.com and don't forget to download the app. All right. We want to thank our faithful Denali level supporters. That is, of course, Land Sharks, Gold Country Geotourism, Team Squirrel, Groovy Owl, and Cachly, the geocaching app. If you want to know more about supporting this podcast, click on the Patreon link on the cachingandw.com, a website.
That's right. Just like Sprouter did.
And just finding our way.
Ackerdoc.
Dora Moore.
Boomer 365.
Our favorite kitchen appliance, the LG 9000.
And our newest patron, the Arnott family.
Ooh, another new one.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Well,
Welcome.
same new. I'm giving them a new credit for a bit.
Wow.
Not as new, but we appreciate you, Dak.
We also appreciate Kev MacD,
And Subway Mark.
Kid Vegas 19.
J-Car,
Wet Coaster.
Hem Nerve.
Flagman,
You talks to rocks.
Donners.
and Genies.
How about Trexer?
How about Keats 94?
That was suspenseful. Is that
It's
part of
spooky.
the spookiness of the suspenser? Kitty Quest.
Skyhawker.
Ari 54321.
Logwork.
GSM ×2.
Corey Scott.
Al Robrick.
Kennel Barb.
Seebeck Tribe.
Fairwood West.
IMAX.
Team Noltex, hider of the Fear This series.
Ah, yes. Highlighted tonight. And host of the CETO event that we're going to talk about shortly, GeoNav Pro.
And contributor to the spooky series, CRS 98.
Peach of Washington, but I think currently Las Vegas. Or
So
somewhere down
Oh.
south.
saw that earlier. Yeah.
Oh, early spring. Yeah.
And while we're talking about spooky things and scary things in the woods, tick magnet.
Mm.
You know, there's nothing more scary than gas station tuna.
Yeah, well, Beef Pendragon. Scary too. Spooky.
Antaeus.
Segehov.
Green words.
The scariest geocaching rapper I know, MC3 Cats.
And of course, the most terrifying of all, the Camp Clan.
Oh, I've
Yeah,
heard of
stay away from them. They're nothing but trouble.
Yeah. Is your half the camp or the clan? Or just yes?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you, Camp Clan. Thank you, patrons. Thank you, all of you, and Mr. iHam. How can people get in touch with you if they want to know
If
more?
if people want to get a hold of me, easiest way is to just use the geocaching messaging service, iHam, IHAM, and I'll be glad to answer. I may not be able to give you, the answer you're hoping for, but I'll be glad to answer.
You'll get an answer.
Yes, he'll do that. And folks, thank you for taking. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it probably won't be "Go away, kid, you bother me," but no,
Get off my lawn.
get off my lawn. Yeah, no, yeah, just feel free. Always glad to chat.
iHam with the silent P. Nothing. Okay. Hey, folks, thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of Caching in the Northwest. Your support helps keep the quality shows coming. If you like the show, click the Patreon link on the cachingandw.com website. And if you didn't like the show, let us know what you want to talk about. In either case, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and more, and subscribe. Give us a review. Now, if you were in a restaurant, you would tip. If you were in an audience, you would clap. But since you're on a podcast, leave us a fast, free, fabulous, fantastic 5-star review. and you can call 253-693-TFTC and leave a comment, ask a question, or drop off Halloween candy any time of the day or night. And of course,
Chris,
you can email us.
Chris, I think you should keep it as an or. I think it has to be a choice. People either have to leave us a free, fabulous, fast, fantastic 5-star review, or they have to call 253-693-TFTC and leave a comment, ask a question, or drop off Halloween candy. You have to do one of those two things. That there is no other alternative.
When you put it that way, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. You know what? You can email us at feedback@cachingnw.com. You can also join us live every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Pacific for a live show and a very spooky chat. This show is produced by Chris Umfenauer, Jim Paulwitz, and Jay Kennedy. It's licensed under Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Copyright 2022 by Chris Umfenauer. And folks, I ask you to stay tuned for, the after show.
The after show.
I was talking so fast, I didn't even have my finger on the button.
Finger slipped off the trigger, did it? All right.
Oh, you know what? We have so much content tonight from the chat. This is fantastic.
It is.
Let's start with spooky. The hashtag spooky. We'll get those out of the way. Keith says, different kind of spooky, but my swoop flight from Edmonton last year gave me a little bit of the unease. My log on Voodoo Virtual Reward 2.0, GC 891 Delta Alpha. Explains it all.
I know exactly what story he's talking about. Yeah, that's worth checking that one out. All right, what else have we got here? Heading down spooky. Seabeck Tribe says, I heard Megan B was making a trip up north of Spokane to a ghost town. There you go.
Interesting. Wits End?
Let's see. Kitty Quest. Fun one did on the way down to HQ 20, GC3 Golf Juliet 82 Casket Cache. Actually, more cute than scary, but very well done.
Nice.
Let's see. We have one from Dora Moore that says GC4 Alpha Golf Tango Hotel. Poor Bucky and Burnaby is kind of spooky.
That is. That's a good one. Komikino. Oh, I can relate to this one here. GC 27 Bravo 9 Delta. Pitch Black is an old abandoned mine shaft that has a cache in it. He has yet to find it, but I'm gonna just throw out a little
bring a light because it's pitch black.
Well, there's that thought. A little gratuitous self-promotion. I for Halloween weekend coming up here, I'm going to be highlighting one of my older videos where we go into an abandoned mine shaft. We've done a few of those, and I don't know. I just always enjoy them. They're fun.
You're finding the time machines in there?
Not yet.
Okay. Yes. This is the same fear I had, Gates, when crossing the border, saying, "Hey, officer, I just found the loaded festering head of my first victim."
What could possibly go wrong?
Try starting a conversation at the border crossing with that. It'll go fine.
It should be fine. Okay. Another one from Keats, found traditional cache in a cemetery in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. I'm guessing they allow them there. I don't think we heard any places that didn't allow cemetery caches.
Just BC as far as I know then. I don't know. Just Carlo says GC2 Kilo.
November
Foxtrot Zulu. I just couldn't remember what the N was. Thank you. It's called Stew's Head, a new lead. It's a skull in the woods placed near a popular camp for scouts. I found that with a couple of Cub Scouts. That's funny. Who's up? Jim?
Oh, let's see. Wet Coaster found several in cemeteries in Ontario. Some are on the edge, some in the middle. There are lots of small pioneer cemeteries there.
I bet.
Nice. Seabeck Tribe says, I was walking in the woods as it gets dark, and there was a windstorm happening. All by myself during a souvenir from one of the HQ summer promotions.
Dedication. Got it.
Yeah. That's a little
that souvenir. Keats cites that an example of spooky is having eccentric muggles talking to him about Jesus while they rescue him from a snowbank in Cache Creek. True story. He says, well, maybe if you didn't get yourself into predicaments where you need to be rescued out of a snowbank, you wouldn't in that situation.
Oh, you're saying he brought that upon himself?
I'm just saying it feels avoidable.
Let's see, another from Wet Coaster. That's GC9 Papa 58 Papa Surrey Pet Cemetery Virtual Cache, full of headstones for departed pets. It's in the middle of a subdivision.
Interesting. And Doramore brings up the exact same one, so they must have been right on the heels.
Great minds. Yeah.
We have one from Megan. We have we have a pet cemetery in Spokane, and I didn't realize it until a Snag the Tag was published several years ago there.
Ah, there you go.
Yeah, the pet cemetery in Kent it's right at the edge of a neighborhood, and there's houses right across the street from it, and then it's easy to find parking because there's a park and ride right across the road from it. So
there you go.
But it's right there. It's like, wait, does that sign actually? Yeah, that does. There's a pet cemetery there.
Cool. All right. Well, CRS98 was sharing. We were talking about squirrel squash earlier. He says, I found squirrel squash for a milestone. A fellow cacher found it and gave me congratulations on the log before I even got there. Nothing like opening up a coffin only to see your name already written in there.
Nice.
I love it. That's funny.
That may not be right. Yeah.
Who's this? Kitty Quest found a number of caches in different cemeteries in New Jersey. Rahway, New Jersey Cemetery has many American Revolution era figures buried there. So interesting history there.
Indeed.
I do like the history of it. Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Keats says, I came across the late fiddler Buddy McMaster's grave in Cape Breton. It was awesome to find his grave.
Very cool.
And with that, I believe we cleared out the spookies.
Ooh,
Good job. Way to go,
Now we just have to get to the Fatasses.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with this person. This is a Monkey Cakes. Wait. I know who that is.
Yeah.
She says, I've always loved visiting old cemeteries, so helping iHam research the caches for the show was a lot of fun.
Nice.
Thank you so much, Monkey Cakes. We appreciate you. We should have had you on the show.
Indeed.
She did all the hard work.
Indeed.
iHam didn't argue. He's smart.
No, I'm not arguing at all.
Let's see. It wouldn't be Friday without a new episode of Keats 94's Geocaching Adventures launching 5 a.m. tomorrow. Caching under the flight path. Adventures around Vancouver International Airport, including a great virtual find.
Okay, so that actually reminds me, you were talking about ghost towns and whatnot. There is a park just south of SeaTac Airport where all the houses were razed or carted away because of noise abatement. But all the roads are still in there, and a bunch of the foundations are still in there. So it's in some ways it's kind of an urban ghost town right there in. But then they've allowed the wildlife to just basically take over, and they've put in some hiking paths and whatnot. There's several caches in there, but it really is kind of weird when it's like, oh well, there's like 3 steps up to a foundation and nothing there.
We have a place exactly like that up here in the Boundary Bay area, North Delta. It's right across from the Boundary Bay Airport. The airport isn't why it went away. It was actually a military installment or a military base. It was a radio base, but an entire community, schools and homes and office, military offices. And as you say, there's the roads and paths and foundations, but they also put in interpretive signs so that you can walk around. It's loaded with caches. There's an adventure lab in there. It's a fun place to explore, and it's an off-leash park. At least part of it is as well.
Oh, very good. Take your GeoPup with you.
Indeed.
There you go. Seaback Tribe says, I do love cemetery caches because of the history there. Oh, let's see. Brylang says the Eco Blitz, the BCGA Fall 2022 Pizza plus Tree Planting CETO event. So are they planting pizza trees?
They're planting pizza and trees, and then next year you can come back to harvest the pizza that you planted previous year. So it's a way to encourage people to keep coming back for the CETOs.
Yep. And that's really great that they have sustainable pizza. That's going to be wonderful. Yeah.
That's one of the things we do here in BC.
Yeah. So Saturday at noon to 3:30, bring your reindeer. Reindeer. So sorry. We're at Halloween. We're not at Christmas yet.
Yeah, it's too soon for that.
Not according to Costco. Seebeck Tribe says, I got my CCE, that's Community Celebration Event, on November 19th. Challenge your skills in escaping 3 different portal escape rooms. Ooh. That's GC 8 Kilo 027.
Nice. That could be fun.
Yeah. I'm planning on that one. I don't think I have anything going in November.
It's in your neck of the woods.
And finally, Seebeck Tribe says the WSGA Geo Tour kicks off this Saturday at 12 p.m.
Ooh. Hey, have we had a guest on to talk about that Geo Tour? Was I maybe away and missed it?
You missed it. It was a fantastic episode. You should go back and listen to it.
All right. I'll go back to I rarely listen to our podcast, but I will go back and listen to that one because I'm very curious about that Geo Tour.
We've got one of the caches on there. We had to go back and we got looking at it. We realized that the informational tag in the lid of the with the info you collect was misspelled. So we had to create a new tag for it. So
nice. So yeah, that is it's 20 caches to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the WSGA in all 7 regions, districts, departments. Yeah. So there's 140 caches to go find.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Wow.
And you have to do it. You have to. It's required.
Wow.
And with that, folks, thanks for tuning in this evening. Until next week, get out and get caching in the Northwest.